The last ice age came to an abrupt end, and during the exact time of it, most of the biggest species roaming our Earth became extinct. And during this exact time, according to the worldwide ancient records, the advanced lost civilization sank forever. My name is Alexander, and today we are gonna talk about the end of the last ice age, the extinction of the megafauna, so the big mammals roaming the earth at those times, and about the lost civilizations. For example, the Atlantis, which according to Plato sank about 9600 BC, so during the exact time of the abrupt end of the last ice age. So the last ice age ended about 9500 BC, and the last stage of the ending of the finishing of the last ice age is often called the Younger Dryas because of the plant called Dryas octopetala, and octopetala, octo means 8, so a plant with 8 petals in it. So the Younger Dryas is a period of about 500 to 1000 years at the end of the last ice age, so finishing about 9500 or 600 BC, which, as we shall see later, is almost the same as told by Plato about the sunken land of Atlantis, 9600 BC, but that will be a little bit later. So during these 500 to 1000 years, because geologically speaking these are, this is a very short period of time, and it's very hard to define the real boundaries and exact boundaries of this period. So during this period, the ice caps on the northern and southern hemisphere melted totally and sank the land of the total area of about 25 million square kilometers, which is a little bit more than modern North America, meaning that during this about 500 to 1000 years, the overall area on our globe of more than North America sank forever. So we shouldn't be surprised that, according to lots of myths from all around the world, which we shall dive into in a little bit later, during this time lots of lost advanced civilizations sank forever. During this period of the end of the last ice age, the overall temperatures on our Earth suddenly went down, which is actually mysterious when it comes to the end of the ice age, and then they suddenly rose up, and because of that the ice age ended and the climate on our planet was in most parts more habitable for human beings or other animals than before. And that's why during the exact same period, the Neolithic Revolution started. The Neolithic Revolution, also called the Agrarian Revolution, is the starting of sedentary lifestyle by human beings in villages and small cities. Because in the past and before the Neolithic Revolution, humans for all their previous lifetimes were actually hunter-gatherers and nomads, right? So they were walking from place to place, hunting animals and gathering some plants, some fruits, some berries, for example, right? And because of that sudden change in the climate and of this end of the ice age, the Neolithic Revolution began, and we started domesticated animals and having crops, right, and living in small villages and cities. And actually during exactly the same period of time, all of the megafauna, so the big mammals like mammoths, rhinoceroses, saber-toothed tigers, and many more, about I think 40 species or more, went extinct. And it was a sudden extinction, right? And it is actually most of the theories concerning these extinctions are illegitimate, because one of them tells us that there was a sudden epidemic, right? And there was a virus or bacteria or anything that killed all of this megafauna on the entire globe, which is actually ridiculous. And the other theory is also ridiculous because it tells us that the human beings were hunting and they hunted all of those animals all over the globe, right? So both of those theories, which are the most dogmatic theories, are illegitimate and ridiculous, as I mentioned. But actually there are several non-orthodox theories concerning this period of the Younger Dryas, of the end of the Ice Age, which not only explain the sudden Neolithic revolution, sudden melting of the waters of the ice caps, sudden extinction of the megafauna, but also others, for example the myths from all over the world concerning the lost civilization which existed before the 9600 BC, so before the melting of the waters, which is actually logical because if the total area on our planet of more than North America sank during this time, and it was very sudden in terms of geology, so why couldn't there have existed before a civilization that was a little bit more advanced than the hunter-gatherers that we know? Of course it could, and as we will see now, there is plenty of evidence concerning this scenario that I show you. So first, the most widely known version of myth, of history, of story about lost civilization is Plato's Atlantis, which was described in his two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. And according to Plato, in the very distant past, which is actually called today prehistory, before 9600 BC, there existed a land of Atlantis, which was beyond the Heracles pillars, which is modern Gibraltar, and so it was on the Atlantic, and there are several indications that he meant the Atlantic Ocean, right? So on the Atlantic Ocean there was a civilization of Atlantis which sank suddenly because of the earthquakes and of the waters that sank it, right? About 9600 BC. And we can say that it is a story, maybe a kind of utopian story about the ideal state, right? But actually it may not be like that at all, because for example, in the Aztec mythology we've got the prehistorical land of Aztlan, and as we see, the Atlantis and Aztlan are very similar etymologically, right? Which I think couldn't be a coincidence, because it is not only which is not only a similar name, but also a similar description of the so-called wild land that was being sunk, and of the pyramid or the temple on the middle of this island, which is the same as in the Plato's story, right? And also according to the Aztecs and later tribes of the Mesoamerica, of the Central America, this land also sank in about 9600 BC. So as we see, it cannot be a coincidence that both of those stories are so similar, and that people who were totally isolated for each other, not only by the vast spaces but also by many thousand years, were describing the same area, the same lost civilization that sank on the exact same place on the Atlantic Ocean during the exact same time. But actually, this is not the only story about lost civilization, because all over the world we've got not only the stories about the Great Flood, which are about 2,000 to 4,000 all over the globe, right? Stories of the global deluge, which are almost similar, because for example, in the biblical story, which is actually the most widely and commonly known, the main hero was Noah, and he, as we know, he got onto his ark, he built the ark, and he got onto his ark with the animals and with 7 members of his family, with his wife, with his 3 sons and 3 wives of his sons, right? And the same situation can be found in lots of mythologies from all over the world. there are the so-called seven sages, which in Mesopotamia were called the Apkallo, which were also the religious story hero, which is the Xusutros, were escaping in the ark before the Great Flood occurred, right? And the same stories actually can be found in India, where the main flood story hero, Manu, is being directed with the ark by the seven sages, right? This number of seven people plus one main hero can be found on almost all over the globe, even in both Americas, right? But when it comes to the flood, we've actually got some evidence that it is connected with the real geological events of the end of the last ice age, of this Younger Dryas period, and of this sudden extinction of the megafauna, because all over the globe in caves and caverns we found lots of skeletons of the animals, mostly megafauna, which are scattered then in like catastrophic positions, right? And all of the dates concerning these skeletons are about 10,500 BC to 9,600 BC, which, as we see, is very similar to the story of Atlantis, of the Great Flood, etc. And according to lots of geologists, these scattered and catastrophic skeletons are most probably the result of floods. Of course, this do not need to be the great floods, right? But some floods. And as I mentioned at the beginning, that kind of 25 million of square kilometers sank during those periods, so we shouldn't be surprised that all over the globe we find not only those scattered animals, but also the flood stories, which are very similar and, in my opinion, are not the stories, the fantasies of our ancestors, but are actually the accounts of the events that took place during the end of the Ice Age, during the so-called Younger Dryas. But now, when it comes to the Younger Dryas, I mentioned at the beginning that there was a sudden fall in the temperature and then rise. And according to lots of theories, it could be accounted for the catastrophe that occurred during those periods. And as we see, this Younger Dryas period is very sudden. The changes on the melting of the water, the changes in temperatures, and the changes in the way of human lives and animals' extinction are very sudden. And that's why lots of scientists, orthodox or unorthodox, are proposing theories about the catastrophe of this crucial period to understanding of our deep prehistory, right? So, according to one theory by geologist Robert Schoch, there was a solar flare, right? The solar flare is a flare of ionized plasma and particles from our sun, which, if happened to modern times, could actually destroy all of the electricity on our planet. So if it happened right now, it could have tremendous effects on our society as a whole, right? And there are lots of indications that during about 9,600 BC there occurred a very enormous solar flare that could totally change the climate on our planet. And as we know, the flare from the sun are concerned with extreme heat, so that's why the glacier waters could melt, right? But there are also other theories. For example, physicist LaViolette claimed that during these times he calculated there was a sudden explosion from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, which also is almost the same as a solar flare but much stronger, and it also involves the particles, accelerated particles, rays, and even plasma, right, coming to our solar system. And interestingly, it is also very connected to the previous Schoch's theory about the solar flare, because actually these rays from the center of our galaxy could trigger our sun to actually create a next solar flare. So during this period there could be a double catastrophe, right? But there are also other theories concerning, for example, comets or asteroids, meteors, etc., which are very interesting, and in my opinion there is all of these events during the end of the Ice Age cannot be substantiated by just normal geological standard views. And I think, in my opinion, and from my all years of researches, during this time there most probably occurred a global cataclysm which totally changed the climate on our planet, led to the sinking of civilizations of Atlantis, Aztlan, or whatever we should call it. And after that it triggered the Neolithic revolution and the restart of our civilization, right? And the reteaching, because also concerning this period of the Great Flood, in most of the mythologies from all around the world, after the Great Flood, the great sages or teachers of mankind came and retaught humanity how to make settlements, how to create crops, how to domesticate animals, etc. And I think that all those dots that I showed you are being clearly connected with each other and can be accounted very legitimately by the scenario of a global catastrophe at the end of the Younger Dryas period, about 9600 BC, during the end of the Ice Age, because no other theory can explain so much phenomena that I've just shown you. And also, I want you to announce that during this autumn of 2021, finally my book Déjà Vu is being published. It is a book about lost civilizations, about this catastrophe of the Younger Dryas period, about the advanced ancient and prehistoric technologies, and about the cycles of times and repeating history. Actually, this is extremely interesting. There is a whole lot of notes, footnotes and bibliography in there, and by reading it you can get much more details about those topics that I am showing you on this channel. So stay tuned. Don't remember to subscribe and subscribe to my channel and like this video in order to know the latest information about the publishing of my book, right? And that would be all for today's episode. I hope that you like it, and if you want me to take a closer look at some specific information that I've mentioned here, you can write down below in comments. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.